Welcome to Getting to the Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today's guest is the executive chef and owner of the Urban Oyster, Chef Jasmine Norton. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I tried to get as much energy in that intro as possible. And sometimes I'm bored or sounding corny. It's like, all right. So, I guess the de facto start-off question I like to ask people, describe your word. Let's get it. Let's talk about Urban Oyster. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about things.
Yeah, definitely. I've always loved to cook, but the reason I went in the direction of oysters was because of a lack of desire in Black culture for that particular cuisine. I found it interesting that when I would want to go out, for happy hour and things like that, my friends would always want to go to your average, pub or, for burger, wings, tacos, all that sorts of thing. And, after learning what their reason for why they didn't like oysters is because they didn't like the texture, they didn't like the look of it and things like that. And, for me, it kind of presented this challenge or, pursuit of exposing my friends and others, because it really just comes down to access and it being, the lack thereof as it pertains to oysters. But if you think about life in general, that's really, the core of why we are afraid to do a lot of things. You know what I mean? The fear of the unknown, the fear of the unfamiliar, all of those things. And so I just chose to do it with food in a white male dominated industry. So just kind of, checking off all those boxes.
I mean, you had that groundbreaking distinction as kind of being like the first in that respect of having an oyster bar, being a Black woman. And that's there. Like, and you're right. I think accessibility is key. Like, people, when they travel and when they try different things, they have a more worldly and broader outlook. And I think sometimes in Baltimore, we get very stuck in what's happening in Baltimore. Even sometimes it's like, I don't go over west. It could be that. It could be that simple. And yes, I think doing that through food, through entertainment, through things that people like, that's a good entry point.
Right.
So Baltimore has a reputation of being a crab city. So how's that worked out for you? And kind of getting over Urban Oysters. I know we all have the crappy COVID thing that we're dealing with. So changes are changes. But in far as the inception of the idea of Urban Oyster, how did that come about? And being in this crab city, like, we are a crab city as much as I think any other place. You don't hear seafood as much as crabs, Baltimore crabs.
Right. Yeah, Baltimore is a crab city, yes, but Maryland is in general a seafood state. I think the reason that I think crabs just overshadow an existing market for oysters, because you know what I mean, like, they're, back in the early 1900s, there have been oystermen along the Chesapeake who dredged oysters and all of that sort of stuff. We do have actually a substantial amount of history with oysters in Baltimore. For instance, a lot of people don't know that the Baltimore Museum of Industry was actually an oyster canning company.
I see you. You out here with the history. I see this.
And if you go onto the premises right now, when you go towards the water, they still have oyster shells mixed in with the rocks on the grounds. So it used to be called Platt's Cannery or Canning Company or something like that.
Yeah.
So there is the history. I think it's just, it's just overshadowed, the crabs overcast, the whole popularity of oysters, for sure.
Is it Is it in part because of maybe that stigma associated with it? Like, I haven't eaten a lot. I've eaten oysters, but I haven't eaten a lot of oysters. And maybe it's because of you. I can cut myself trying to shuck them or anything along those lines. Is that a piece of it or no?
No, I think it goes back to accessibility.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, right, oysters and lobsters were very similar in how they surfaced, on the scene of the culinary world. So oysters went from being a delicacy, right?
Yeah.
So were lobsters. Those were things that you could only find in a certain caliber of a restaurant, fine dining, places where you had to be, dressed to the nines. And those are places that most people couldn't afford.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or places where if you could afford it, it was a splurge, or, it was something that you could do periodically. And because of either of those two factors, that just wasn't something we consumed on a regular basis.
Okay. Yeah.
So it really gets back down to the premise of accessibility. Same thing with lobsters. I mean, now we're buying them left and right from all of these, like steam pot places, like your rock and toss and your hook and reel and all those. Now we can afford those things because it's no longer a delicacy. They're no longer unobtainable. They're no longer beyond, what we can afford to have on a regular basis, whereas crabs have always been affordable, have always been the cheaper option for seafood.
Okay, yeah.
Of course, unless you're getting like jumbo lump crab cakes and stuff like that, but it's levels to crabs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean the only crab that I deal with is jumbo lump because I'm a snob, and I mean this is how I knew I made it when I was able to get lobster all the time. No, I'm kidding. Speak a little bit on the meaning behind the name. Like, I have my ideas, but this is more so for the audience. What's the meaning behind the name, the Urban Oyster?
So it's a twofold meaning. First, for a clear understanding that it's a Black-owned business. So that's that. And then the second being the feel, the vibe and the feel that, we wanted to provide, in the dining experience. Because of everything I just told you, fine dining, super prestigious, super, all of those things, pretentious is the word I was looking for. None of those things we want it to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's old school. That's the thing of the past. You shouldn't have to, unless you want to, dress in a certain attire to be able to enjoy quality food. And so that was what we wanted to, portray, based off of the name of the business, as well as it being Black-owned.
Okay. Yeah, I dig it. I was just going to say, like, we got oysters in the city. No.
That's a good one, too.
I mean, that might be a TV show. I don't know. HBO, hit your boy up, cut that check. So as an entrepreneur, what would you say is one of the best pieces of advice that you've received?
One of the best pieces of advice.
I've gotten a lot of bad advice. This is what they call padding. I got a lot of bad advice where it's just like, it's always like some type of like drug reference that I don't know if applies to like podcasting. I can't step on a podcast. What are you talking about? Cut it with this. I don't know what you're talking about. But they're entrepreneurs. So, if they're successful, maybe I can apply it somewhere. Who knows? Right.
It's I can't say what has been the best advice. That's a really good question. But I can tell you through experience.
Okay.
That credit, you know what I mean, is a real thing. It's unfortunate that that's something that determines your entire story of your qualifications, what, if you are worthy of being invested into.
Sure.
But I will say another thing is, maintaining rapport and relationships with people And I would say that, especially right now, and I don't mean just in your industry. I will say one thing that someone else has privy me to have advice with is knowing your competition, doing your research. Like, you should know the ins and outs of whatever your industry is, so that you can know what the current trends are, so that you can stay in the loop of what's going on, be a market, competitor.
Yeah.
With what, and a true great piece of advice, like when I very, very, very first started, a friend of mine told me, like, you should always start a business that's like fulfills a need, like fills a void.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that business will always thrive. That business will always be necessary. It will always be what they now throw around a word, essential.
Yeah.
Because it fulfills something that was missing, that's needed, that's depended upon. And so that's definitely a good piece of advice that that has been, passed on to me. And food is definitely necessary.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been to the previous location or what have you, and I want to, because I want to check out what's happening right now. I think I read something about it's not farmers markets, but maybe like different events or what have you that you're doing, or did I misread that?
Wait, say it again. The internet failed us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So like I went to the previous location and the food was fire. So I need my fix is what I'm getting at. So
thank you.
So I would be remiss not to ask, where can he find things at? I mean, outside of your social media and all, but where can he find you at these days?
So right now we are working in partnership with a local hotel. So right now we're at the Hyatt Regency. And shortly, in a few weeks, we'll be kind of moving about with this back to mobile concept to the Hyatt. I'm sorry, to the Hotel Revival. So we'll be starting there, I believe, on the 18th of November. So we'll be there through basically next spring, the 2021. Yeah.
Okay, so I know where to get my fix at. I can get a room in a Revival, get my fix, just...
Absolutely. Yeah, I made the executive decision that it just, from a business perspective, is not smart for us to take on, any new ventures with, so much overhead with, a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
It's also time for us and a lot of other businesses to reevaluate what the dynamics and the logistics of our business, needs to be in order to survive in the current climate that will actually impact a lot of what used to be, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people's business models will not be able to go back to what they once were because of this pandemic, and because it has totally changed the dynamics and the demand of how people, want to dine out and want to, have experiences and things like that. So, for us right now, we're just kind of sitting still with this whole experience and this whole philosophy, and, just thinking of, restructuring our business model as far as, the restaurant is concerned.
I think with COVID and some of the changes that are there and kind of the responses that have happened, I think people have seen really what their business is and where their business could go. So, having that foresight to not be stubborn and say, oh, I'm just going to do this, we'll be great. And then, seeing places that have been around for forever just do that move and it just not work out. City Cafe comes to mind, and no shots, of course, but it's a thing where it's just like a lot of mixed messages out there. And I think you sound like, yeah, we're still here. We're still here. We're still doing this. And that's what I like to hear. And in that, it brings me to my next question, which is a two-parter, actually. Greatest triumph of the business owner and greatest challenge as a business owner. What are your thoughts on that?
Say the first part again.
Greatest triumph.
Greatest triumph is being recognized as someone who's making a difference. It's important to me that our food is spectacular, of course, that our customer service also is spectacular, but, making a difference, in a city that I was born and raised in, my small contribution to, shedding a better light on Baltimore, helping people to learn, the ins and outs of being an entrepreneur themselves. A lot of what I learned in business came from trial and error. I learned it as I experienced it. And that's something that I'm really striving to be able to build some sort of cohort or something like that. I mean, there's so many teenagers that I've met who literally created businesses in this pandemic. And that is what the world needs. They need creative people who can rise to the occasion of adversity, challenges, and, do the complete opposite of what most people would expect for someone to do under pressure. You know what I mean? I could have been one of those people that has been maybe this restaurant just isn't for me. This restaurant thing is just not for me. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to do something else. But to know how to pivot and be creative with that and still be in demand or, something that people are wanting and needing. I just think that that's what is needed, in the future, as our future. And so what I'd like to do is establish a cohort, down the line and teach people just the basic business necessities, where to register your business, what documentation you need to be a legal operating business. A lot of, unfortunately, Black businesses are not operating legally. And it's just because of lack of knowledge. Again, access.
Yes.
Access. Not having those people in their corners, not knowing the right people, not knowing the right questions to ask. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things I'd like to provide to young teenagers who, they have the vision, they have, they have the ambition, but it's, the more administrative things that they might not have, or, they just don't know where to start, where to go, what the process is. So something I'm definitely hoping. I was supposed to be doing it this year with actually a school in Cherry Hill called New Era Academy, but of course with the pandemic, it's kind of put a lot of things on hold. But it's definitely something I'm not willing to, let slip under me.
That's great. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost. I went to school for business, and I think one of the early episodes of this podcast I did, I think the first episode, actually, it was with James Nasty. And one of the things that he had mentioned, he was just people don't have their business stuff together. He's I want to do a class on it. He was just Black people are free, non-Black people, you got to pay. And it was great. And he was just kind of speaking on the accessibility thing. And, even now, with this podcast, I've been doing podcasting for 12 years. And I got to this point where I was what am I doing? Am I just going to do this as a hobby? What do I view this as? And, sometimes things can be really simple, and you can just kind of go through a few clicks and find the whole process of registering your business and doing all of that. And other times you may not be as savvy, or you may not be doing it in the right way, and you need somebody to help you walk through that and get through that stage. And it's something that easily can be missed.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think one of my questions you already asked, I have the gauche question of why Baltimore? You've already answered it, I think. So speak a little bit on the Baltimore food scene. You're in that industry, and I think the Baltimore food scene is great. I think it's special. I think it's unique. What are your thoughts around it? Is it special? Is it unique? And if so, what makes it that way?
I certainly think that the Baltimore food scene is definitely in this, I would say, reinventive process, right?
Yeah.
Before I started my business, I worked corporate America. I was working in New York, and a lot of the cuisine I felt I couldn't find in Baltimore. Like I couldn't find ramen, couldn't find super good bao buns or tacos or pizza or whatever.
Yeah.
And like then these young millennials started showing up, just doing any and everything you can imagine. I mean, even taking donuts and just like making them into like just no longer Dunkin' Donuts and 7-Eleven, So Baltimore is definitely like evolving, is definitely, a go-to, something that people are now traveling to our city to, we just had a customer, which is not the first time, but we just had a customer who traveled all the way to Philly and actually stayed at the hotel just so she could have our food. And we have quite a few people that come from Philly, from Jersey, from, DC, Virginia. I had a woman who her mother-in-law was having surgery and she had been following us, but she was from like Richmond and they were coming in town to be there for her mother-in-law. And she's like, I finally, like get to experience your food, So I think that, we are definitely like on the map, definitely highly, sought after. But as a local, I feel like the restaurant scene is very cliquish. Not owners, but consumers.
Yes.
Consumers. There are particular restaurants I don't necessarily, care to indulge in because they don't want me there. And I find it pretty sick that individuals know that they don't want people of color there or black people there. And for whatever reason, you're still loyal to particular businesses, but you give black businesses a hard time. Like, oh, because, you asked for 3 sauces and we might have gave you 2, or you asked for 10 napkins and I gave you 9. Like, like the most petty things you give me a hard time about. But these blatant racist restaurants,
yes,
you're so loyal to not necessarily the food, because the food is mediocre, but the vibe, like, really?
I remember when this started, and I try to play chaos agent sometimes. I mean, I'm 6'4" and I'm like 315. I was like, no one's talking ish to me. So I remember there was one crab shack that I was like, I think I'm just going to roll up there and just have a conversation with someone. Hey, how's it going? So you don't like this. So this is what you think. But just seeing how you have certain places where I think for me, when I find out what's happening, because I'm a foodie, when I find out what's happening at certain places or hearing different stories, I don't go with well, we don't know. It's like, nah, this person experienced that. I don't need a video. You're not getting my money anymore.
Right. How many times? I mean, even if it's not blatant, you know what feeling you got if you did go before it ever was a thing that was made like worldwide. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what do we do?
It's that situation, and I think you speak with your dollars, you speak with what you're doing, you speak with your authenticity. And I've heard the clickage. This is the first time I've heard the clickage thing within the food community. I've heard it in the arts community for different reasons, but yeah, I think that's one of the things, the real thing. I don't want to do purely like, hey guys, everything is harmonious. It's like, nah, things are real. And in that particular area where your spot was at, the brick and mortar, I've heard some different things. And I was in that area regularly because my barber was there. And, it was a thing. And when I heard about what was going on, I was kind of pissed. And that's just factual. Hearing about things with, what was it, the spot, Ice Queens, what have you, just different things that was happening. And people in the know, my barber being one of the guys that, moved over there, he was just like, this is not a secret. He's like, people who have a business over there, they know.
Absolutely. And, for me, I'm always one to like, kind of like push the envelope or like, do everything that is not expected of me to do, because like I never want to be predictable. And so my whole philosophy with going to that area is I belong just like anyone else does.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so first of all, I was sought after, right? So which means that from the developer standpoint, obviously, like, yes, I do have a great brand, but I'm a Black woman first. And so that's just naturally what's going to flock to my business and support me. So, but my philosophy is like, why not go there? Like, I belong there just like anyone else does. And my people are going to come, and whoever else wants to come, we welcome everyone. And we're going to be good. I can't say that's exactly how it went, but I mean, we also didn't have those same blatant experiences that unfortunately Ice Queens did too.
Yeah.
But also when I say cliquish, I also think that people go to certain parts of Baltimore because those are where, particular areas and restaurants are known to be. And so people are like married to those areas. People are married to the Avenue. People are married to Fells Point. People are married to Canton. You know what I mean? And everywhere else seems like just so far of a distance, which was one of the challenges for us being in Locust Point. It's not even like 10 miles from one side of the water to the next.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not 10 miles. It's not even 5 miles from Fells Point to Locust Point, but people were so, they're so accustomed to these areas, and so that is another point, that I meant when I say people were there, that the food scene is kind of cliquish as far as from a consumer local standpoint.
No, yeah, that's true. Like my philosophy in food, and it's just like you connect with somebody, you see what they're doing, you try some good food. I go through the publications, what's listed, what's open, what's shut, BaltimoreMagazine.com, whatever, and follow people on social media. And ultimately, in part, doing this podcast is why I reach out to some of the people I do. What are you doing? Is your food good? I've been to places where they have all of the, yo, brother, come through, peace. And I'm like, kind of ran out of your special real quick. I don't know. And I'll give it, I'll give it some love or what have you. But at the same time, it's like I come purely as a consumer, and I don't care where it's at. I'm going to travel there if it's good food, if it's good stuff. One, I'm going to try it, enjoy it, put it on, and speak the praises of it. And, that's just how it goes for me. So I got two more questions before we wrap up. Then you can shamelessly plug, do whatever, social medias, all of that stuff. So share your thoughts on being on Triple G, Guys Grocery Games.
Oh, man. First of all, I was blown away that little old me would even be discovered, you know what I mean? Like, and be put in that position. So I don't know. I don't know if God whispered in their ear or what. But I'm definitely grateful for the experience. It was a great one too, to be honest with you. Guy is just as funny, corny jokes, all those things. But you know what? He was very inspiring as well, like very motivating. Like, he wanted us to shine in the best light, all of us, win or lose. He wanted us to shine in the best light we could, because essentially, even if we didn't leave with that money, we won the recognition, and we won the exposure to the world being on the Food Network. And so he wanted us to be shined in the best light possible. And to this day, I'm in contact and friends with all of the competitors. We have a group chat, like we were just talking a few days ago, like the one who won, he actually separated from, he was working in the stratosphere as the executive chef at the Top of the World restaurant. And he kind of wanted to go back to his roots. He's Spanish. He wants to cook Mexican food and, cook from his roots. So he's doing that now with a newly open restaurant. And the other chef, one of the finalists, he is working like on some Michelin star type program in Cali. And then the other female, she's just pounding it out, trying to stay, trying to survive in this pandemic. And she's been killing it And I had some friends that went there this summer and made them go and, of course, go to her restaurant. Yeah. So, but no, it was a great experience for sure. Like, I had a great time.
So we're going to have you do like a Guy's Grocery Games version here, like Jasmine's Junk Foods. I don't know. So some type of game here.
We definitely missed the menu because when we still were at the brick and mortar, we were doing pop-up menus during the pandemic. And so one of them was the 2 dishes that I made on Guy's Grocery Games as one of our pop-up menus.
That's fire. The last question I have, for all of those novices out there, for all of those neophytes out there, describe the perfect oyster setup. I'm talking about from what kind of oyster are you going to go with? Does it have toppings? Do you got the bacon in there? What do you got in there? What kind of drink are you having with it? Are you having a drink? Is there music playing? What's the scenario?
So,
I'm talking about yours. You're selling it here. Sell oysters now.
Yes. So I always start with it being fully cooked because that's how I have to win people over.
I like that.
So always reference, that we adopted the concept from, the New Orleans style and tradition of how they prepared, oysters, which is char grilled. And anything with butter, like already kind of like grill somebody in. So we're like lemon garlic butter base, with a blend of mozzarella and Parmesan, like all the things like that. But we have 4 different flavors actually. So we have like a little bit for everyone. So like for your non-dairy folks, we have our teriyaki, option, which has like teriyaki sauce, crushed pineapples, scallions, and wonton. And then for people who like spicy, we have what we call volcano oil, which actually was birthed from a pop-up we did in Providence, Rhode Island, at a restaurant called Bucktown Fish and Chicken. Yeah. And so that's like this. It's like this irresistible heat because it's really flavorful, but it's like this sambal garlic butter. So it's spicy, but it's really good. Like, there's like addictive qualities in spicy foods anyway. And then the BBC, the bacon barbecue cheddar, like everybody loves that one. Everybody loves that.
Great name. It's a great name.
Yeah, I've heard things about that name. So, but yeah, BBC for us is bacon barbecue cheddar.
That's all that matters. I mean, it's transferable.
But we've created these quirky names and all of that stuff like volcano oil, and then the cheese Louise is our mozzarella and Parmesan because it has several cheeses. But the thing is for it to leave a lasting impression and for it to be memorable. You know what I mean? So down to the name, down to the experience, down to the mixture of ingredients, things that you wouldn't expect. So we're all about the experience and, the consumption of our food.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Then that's pretty much it. Shamelessly plug anything that you want to plug right now.
Okay. So as you know, or I should say, we are still alive and well as the Urban Oyster. We are currently working out of the Hyatt Regency right now, but we will be moving our residency over to the Hotel Revival, and probably rolling with that until this pandemic is over. But we have also found a permanent home for our burger concept, which is the Urban Burger Bar. Actually, I'm sitting in here right now at our stall at Whitehall Mill, which will be opening this fall. And expect those same great flavors, same cool names. Like we got Bacon Bay, we got the Skyscraper Burger, which is like massive, like it's like this, like tall off the plate, and amazing milkshakes that we'll have. We'll have a banana pudding milkshake. We'll have a strawberry short milkshake with like that good humor crumble, strawberry shortcake crumble.
Oh boy, what is happening here?
We'll have a s'mores milkshake. So, like I said, to me, it's the playground of the creative right now with everything that's going on. And it's a chance for us to test and put on to action a lot of the concepts and aspirations that we've had for the business. So look out for that. Urban Burger Bar coming soon.
So social media, all of that stuff, where can they check you out?
So you can find us for the Urban Oyster at the Urban Oyster on Instagram or www.theurbanoyster.com. Also, the Urban Burger Bar on Instagram. Website under construction right now, but it'll obviously be the urbanburgerbar.com as well. So check us out. And if you're looking for me or my episode on Guys Grocery Games, I certainly know that by heart. So it's season 23, episode 26. Yeah, that's what it is.
Wow, just right there, just right there in the front. So thank you. This has been fantastic. I'm going to sign off. For Chef Jasmine Norton, I'm Rob Lee, saying that there is art and food in and around Baltimore. All you have to do is look for it.